Right, thank you all so much for voting with your virtual wallets, your time and attention this morning. I'm delighted to announce that we have a result, so it's very exciting. Yes, there they are. There's all the virtual money. I did so want to throw up in the air and create a mess, but I won't. So before we go into, I've got a couple of panels today, then the speed networking, not as somebody came up to me and asked, speed dating. It is speed networking, although I don't like to cramp anybody's style in the room. Speed dating can happen maybe after. And innovators and people attending speed networking, listen up, there'll be some instructions on what you need to do coming up very shortly. Myself and Mitra will let you know how all that's going to work so that you have a speedy, networking-y, fantastic-y time. So, I'm doing it again, aren't I? I'm trying to build the tension. What I really hope, Matt, is that when you announce the winner, you're going to go, and the winner is... But maybe you won't. Matt, please give a warm welcome. Please give a warm welcome to Matt with the results.
Thank you. Two things I'd like to say really before we announce the winners. One is really to say thank you very much to the judges who turned up today and gave all their valuable input and all their questions. So thank you very much for that one. So can we have a bit of audience participation, some claps, please? And the other one really was to say thank you very much to everyone who came and everyone who presented, because I think there were some very, very strong presentations, and I'm sure you'll agree there were some very interesting proposals there. So again, please give a hand for these people. Thanks very much. It was a very difficult decision. So we took all the judges' scores, we put them all into the spreadsheets, and we ranked them accordingly. We added up all of your public vote in terms of the money, and interestingly, the winner of both of those was actually the same company, which made the decision relatively easy. It was, however, very, very, very close. I mean, even from sort of, all the way through. I mean, it was a very difficult decision to make in terms of the actual scoring, and I think, this is no sort of poor showing anyone, the person that we're not going to announce, because actually I think they were all very strong applicants. I'd also say that part of what we do in terms of the IC Tomorrow programme, like I said to you many times, and I'll say it again, is putting the right people in the right room. It's partly about the speed networking event, it's partly about events like this, it's partly about the competitions that we run. So we will continue to work with everyone here, everyone who, whether you won or lost, really, there's connections, there's conversations, there's help, there's support that we can do. So even if you don't win today, then please do bear in mind that we will be in touch and get in contact with us, and we'll help you as much as possible. In terms of the winner, like I said, it was a very difficult choice. One of the things that sort of came out in terms of the winning sort of proposal really was the kind of sort of breadth of the solution, and really actually the sort of the potential that would then give in order to kind of run a trial with a kind of cultural organisation, which is partly the point of today. So while I think there were different kind of pros and cons for different proposals, I said that the winners came out as a kind of very strong kind of broad approach. On that note, I'd like to say that the winner is, how long do you want me to wait? Wild Knowledge. There you go, you get a stack of cash. Hey! Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you. Yeah, we'll do it.
So, big congratulations to Wild Knowledge. Big commiserations to the other 9 of you. I know you've travelled from afar, but notwithstanding, I still hope that today's been a fantastic platform for people who have had who are going to have ideas, have had their minds open to what might be possible for their organisations. So, I still think and hope that you'll get a lot of interest, and this will be a really useful platform for you. So thank you again, really, for participating, because it really, when people say it couldn't have happened without you, my God, it really couldn't have happened without you this morning. It would have been all of us looking around waiting for innovators to pitch to us. So thank you so much. So, hope you're now ready for an afternoon so rammed full of content your head will spin. I'd love to welcome to the stage a panel for digital investment, and so that's Peter Murphy-Burke on behalf of Nesta and on behalf of Arts Council England. I'm hoping she's going to wear 2 hats. Anthony Story, do we have Anthony in the building? Anthony, welcome. Matt, who you already know, and chairing this session is our chair, Dan Licari. I'm not going to sit there. Sorry, not to be rude, but I won't. So we're going to look at routes to investment. As we all remember, investment, the donning of a new garb, new livery, new set of clothes, for creative and cultural organisations. And we're going to talk about funds, actual places where you can get that. And more importantly, it's all very well saying there's a fund, but what's driving these people? What are the buttons? What are the hot words that you need to give them? What are the things they're trying to address? This is a panel that will give us an insight into some of that. So without further ado, I'd like you all to give the whole of the panel, and in particular our chair, Dan Licari, a warm welcome. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I just want to say thanks for that, Helga. Hope everyone's suitably charged. We've got the graveyard shift, but we'll make sure we push through. And my name is Dan. I work with a number of organizations. I help organizations find partners, projects, and finance. And the reason I'm chairing this is because I know a few of these people up here. I work with Creative England on investment and partnerships. I work as an assessor on the digital platform for TSB. And I've worked with the others before as well. So I wanted to pass over to each one, give a 5-minute sort of overview on what their view on the world is, particularly in the lines of investment. And I think that we will then start off with some questions and kick it around. It'll be opened up to the floor probably in about 20 minutes. So hopefully no one will nod off in that time. First over to Peter.
Hello everybody, my name is Peter Murphy-Burke, Relationship Manager for Digital and Creative Economy, Arts Council England. So I'm going to be talking today about our main stream of funding, which is grants for the arts, which happens to be very underused for digital activity. We're great at, we have over 9 art forms that we usually fund. We also fund digital and we fund creative economy, hence my job. So I would like you to really take away from today the fact that you can come to grants for the arts for investment for digital projects. Have we got my presentation lined up? It's got a lovely picture. It says Grants for the Arts. It's great.
Should I give them it's like this kind of?
Yeah, and my glamorous assistant is now demonstrating the application pack. And we have further glamorous assistants on our store, which is just behind the screen, to help you with your application, should you wish to make one today.
So in the meantime, while we're setting these up,
hey, here we go.
Good.
Right, so Arts Council England and our main investment stream, which is Grants for the Arts. This is our mission statement. We've also developed a 10-year strategy for the arts, which is called Achieving Great Arts for Everyone. So what does Grants for the Arts actually fund? We like to fund, unusually for an investor, individuals. We also fund organisations. It very much is a time-limited, so a project-based fund. We will stretch out to 3 years, but we really prefer short, time-based projects. And importantly for everybody, there is actually no deadlines for this application. So who does it fund? These are the individuals that we fund. So it's not just artists. You can see from the list, it's producers, it's people working in the creative industries, presenters. And within this strand, the grants normally range from £1,000 to £30,000. But the average grant is just under 10k, so it's 9,998. We also fund a broad range of organisations. So again, it's not just arts organisations, it's local authorities, might be an NHS working with different partners. And in this strand, the grants stretch from £1,000 to £100,000. And again, the normal sort of grant within this strand is about 30k. So who does it not fund? We don't fund, per se, commercial organisations or commercial products. But if we can see quite clearly that our budget, our investment is ring-fenced for a specific arts-based activity, then we will fund a commercial organisation. So cultural organisations do use the networking time to broker relationships with digital media organisations, because we'd be very fond of some digital applications coming in after this event. We don't fund students for artwork that is related directly to their course, but on the point of graduation we will fund students. So what does it fund? So there's lots of arts-related activity, so it's not just traditional exhibitions, performances, dance work. We go around, wrap around the whole of the project, so it's your marketing activities, it's the project management. So it really is a holistic investment to make your project happen. These are the other types of activity that we also fund, so broad media like public art. You can already see how the synergy between digital and public art could happen. We can have GPS located data within the public realm, working with a creative writer, for example. So the application process really couldn't be easier. Use our website. We are public sector, so we have to be completely transparent. We give you all the assessment prompts that we use to assess your application. Look at all our criteria, look at achieving great arts for everyone, and you should be able to put together a really crunchy application. So there is a high demand, and we look at the success rate for individuals of being about 35% and for organisations being about 48-49%, which compared to other funds is quite high. So please do come into an application with us and have a dialogue with the organisation. So, top tips. Remember our strategy, achieving great arts for everyone. We've also released a creative media policy, so if you're looking at a digital application, please do look at the thematic areas that we want to fund digital work under. Follow the prompts on the guidance note, always a good tip. And it is a very evidence-based application. We can only judge the application on the evidence you give us. So be succinct, don't waffle, have a look at the budget and make sure that that balances and that you've got enough resource to actually do your project. So, in summary, it's open access, there is no deadline, you can come into us at any point during the year and have a look at your own business cycle and decide when that should be. It's assessed on what you submit. As I've said before, it's very evidence-based. And the first point of contact is our inquiries team. They're extremely helpful. They've got all the information online. Now I'm going to turn into Angela Pugh from Nesta, so you'll see me transform. Hello, I'm Angela Pugh from Nesta. It's a £7 million fund, which is a partnership between Arts Council England, Arts, Humanity and Research Council, and Nesta. So we've actually passported our money directly to Nesta. So we are looking very much for a science-based perspective on arts activities. So it's the science and technology side that we're particularly interested in funding through the Nesta Fund. It lasts for 3 years, so we've got 3 years to go at it. It's about an arts organisation, technology provider, and a researcher. So these are the key thematic areas, and I think from the presentations today you can see how it would really, really fit well with this fund. So it's user-generated content and social media, digital distribution, mobile location, games, etc. So the lead applicant has to be an arts organisation and they have to be based within the UK. The technology partner has to have the appropriate skills, but does not have to be located in the UK. So you can work with an international partner. If you wanted to work with MIT, for example, we're quite welcome to applications of that sort. And the research team has to be based in the UK. So stage 1 is a very free and funky expression of interest. It's about 2 pages, and you find out within 7 weeks in making an application whether you're through to the next round, and then you've got 12 months to make a full application. So if you want any further information, the main contact at Nesta is Angela Pugh. That's the website and that's the email. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Moving along, I know that there'll be different varieties of funding, and access to these types of funds actually are varied, but sometimes aren't as hard as you think. And to talk to you a little bit about that, it will be Matt Samson, who's the IC Tomorrow Program Director at Technology Strategy Board.
Thank you very much. Here we go. What I want to talk about really is a slightly more sort of broad overview about specifically some of the Technology Strategy Board funding that's available, but also just really sort of gives, again, sort of top tips in terms of how to make applications, and just sort of hopefully make everybody aware of there are sort of many and varied options available for you. I'll skim through this because we've obviously covered it in detail this morning, but really, yeah, the Technology Strategy Board is the UK innovation agency, been around since 2007, focused on commercial, focused on businesses, universities, government. It has a pretty broad remit. Here's some of the facts and figures. Again, I won't necessarily go into those, but actually, you can see there's been quite a lot of interventions. There's been a number of competitions. I think it was 50 competitions last year, and it's something in the region of 60 competitions next year. So there are quite a lot of different options for you to choose from. TSB, I won't go into a lot of detail on this slide, but really this is just sort of to illustrate that TSB does get involved in a number of different sectors, everything from sort of creative through to digital, through to high-value manufacturing, low-carbon vehicles, medicine, nanotechnology. It is a very broad remit. It's all about sort of UK innovation. It's a national body. Moving on. Now, in terms of what the sort of the remit for the TSB really is, it is all about, see if I can move this, otherwise I keep turning around. Sorry, hopefully that's better. It really is all about kind of strengthening the kind of UK position in terms of a global economy. We do a number of different activities. Hopefully we identify those growth sectors and kind of high growth potential sectors and get involved. And we're really looking to kind of encourage UK developers and UK innovators to kind of access those markets. Some of that is driven by our own internal sort of strategy, and some of that is driven by kind of having conversations with the challenge partners and going out and doing a certain amount of sort of frontier scanning really, and finding out what the market is looking for and what the commercial potentials are. There are sort of 4 key sort of underpinning philosophies really in terms of the Technology Strategy Board. It's really, and it starts off with the premise that, is there an opportunity here for a UK-based organisation? Is there a market opportunity? Is that a global market opportunity? So can the TSB help a UK-based organisation take it through to a global market? It's also about the kind of timeliness of the concept. This is not all about, pure research. This is more about kind of getting us through to kind of either a pre-commercial stage or a kind of prototype development stage. So can you take a UK company through to a kind of a potential market in a suitable time frame, sort of 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 5 year time frame? And really in terms of the Technology Strategy Board, one of the key drivers as well is there an element to is there an added value from the public sector funding? I mean, is there a point where there's no point in us funding a particular project that would happen anyway? Hopefully what we're trying to do is enable smaller companies who maybe wouldn't do, maybe this is too risky, maybe this is something they haven't got the resources to cover. There's a reason why it's a great idea that you would love to do, but maybe you can't do it without the funding, and this is the opportunity that gives you access to be able to pull that idea off. There are many, many different options in terms of the Technology Strategy Board. So, I'll come back to this in a minute when I'm talking about kind of sort of tips for applications. But just to sort of show you in a broad spectrum, it's there's the SMART scheme, there's the SBRI scheme. There, say IC Tomorrow is more about kind of smaller interventions. But there are many different tools. So pick the right one. If you haven't heard of them, I would also recommend innovation vouchers. Innovation vouchers are about single companies. They're for up to £5,000 worth of sort of innovative activity, and they're very, very easy to apply for. And that's a sort of, again, another sort of continuous ongoing process. So if you've not heard about that one, then please do take a look, and please do have a look at that one. The reason for the kind of wide tool set really is that there's a number of different interventions, and actually some of those tools are more suited to different parts of the economy. So you may hopefully you've all heard of the sort of connected digital economy catapult, but that's aimed in a sort of particular sector. It's aimed at sort of more larger organisations at the sort of industry level, if you like. And then as you go down through the kind of pyramid in terms of the sort of smaller scale interventions, the feasibility studies are aimed more at the kind of smaller companies. Things like the IC Tomorrow program are really aimed at sort of small and micro studios. I mean, we will also even fund pre-startups if you've got a great idea that you can kind of really sort of articulate and explain how you can take that concept through to commercialization. Then we'll look at helping you do that. So you don't have to be an established company of 200 people looking for additional funding. There are different options for you all the way through the chain, really. Here are some stats. I'm not sure necessarily you can read them, but really it just sort of to emphasize the point that some of the tools are suited to more of a kind of particular scale of organization. So if you look at this in terms of Launchpad, I mean, Launchpad is mostly micro studios, a bit of small studios and some medium. And as you go sort of all the way through the kind of tool set, excuse me, I keep moving backwards and forwards, but things like the sort of collaborative R&D projects, which are, very worthwhile programs, but they tend to be more appealing to the larger organizations. And by their very nature, they are collaborative programs. So if you're a small startup company that's maybe looking to get some funding to perhaps do a proof of market or even develop a prototype, then look at something like the SMART program, because there will be a tool that will suit you. Talking of which, SMART Awards. There are really sort of three options you can apply under. So there's proof of market, proof of concept, and development of prototype. Hopefully fairly self-explanatory, but they tend to range from sort of 6 months through to 2 years, from about sort of 25k grants with 60% funding up to £250,000 worth of funding. So again, depending on where you are, if you've got an interesting idea that's slightly off to one side, that actually you think there's an interesting market potential there, but you'd like to do some studies in terms of proving that there is a market, then we can help you fund that. If you've gone beyond that point and you know there's a market and there's an interesting opportunity and there's a level of innovation, there's a level of commercial potential, but you know what, you need some funding to help deliver that prototype, then the development of prototype fund is more appropriate. With one caveat, I mean, to go back to the numbers in terms of successful applicants, the SMART program is well liked and well subscribed. We get something like 400 applications every round, and we do fund less than 20% because there's a large number and the quality is very high. Not to discourage you, I mean, if it's the right tool, please do go for it, but just be aware that, you need to put some effort into those applications because there's quite a lot of competition out there. Launchpad's another one. Launchpad is interesting in a couple of different ways. Launchpads is about encouraging cluster development. So the Launchpad ones are, the Launchpad Tech City was very much around building that cluster on the Tech City cluster. So if you were in the right area, it was great. If you're not in that area, then it's not appropriate. But the other interesting thing about it was, traditionally in terms of the match funding, we've expected companies, or we've preferred companies to have the funding up front, and then we've helped match it. With Launchpad, we assessed, we evaluated, we selected the potential winners, and then actually we helped them find additional funding. So they were awarded the grants, and then we helped them over the next 12 months with various mentoring activities and other general support. We helped them find that additional financing. So again, that was an interesting option. IC Tomorrow, which I've mentioned several times, so I'll do very, very quickly. It's really about kind of smaller scale interventions, and it's about not just the kind of the smaller prototype funding, but it's also more about kind of, again, putting the right people in the right room. I would suggest as well, if you're looking for, if you don't know where to look, is have a look on Connect, which is innovateuk.org. It's the sort of TSB's sort of social platform, if you like. But actually there are many networks on there, and I would recommend the investment network if you're particularly looking for funding. But please do go on there, because actually you'll find access to the knowledge transfer networks. You'll find us on there in terms of IC Tomorrow. You'll find many of the kind of technology strategy board tools and options are on that platform. So if you don't know about it, please do have a look. Please register. Go have a rummage around. I won't talk about knowledge transfer networks, but there is usually a network for what you do. There are other funding sources, and obviously I won't talk about Nesta because that's been covered, but do have a look at the current Creative England Fund, have a look at things like the Prototype Fund from Abate. If you want to get more information about this, then obviously ask us or grab me afterwards, and I'm happy to give you more information. The Prototype Fund specifically for Abate, just very briefly, is about games prototype development. So it's a 25k fund, it's 100% funding, and it's about building prototypes, and I believe we have some winners in the audience. Yeah. So if you again want more information about that, then come and grab me. Or right, this is maybe the more interesting bit of this. And how are we doing for time? Am I okay? Okay. So this is my sort of top tips for making an application, really. So this hopefully will be very useful. First of all, find the right tool. There are many. They range from grants through to procurements. There are different scales of intervention. So find the right tool. Don't apply for the wrong tool, as you'll be immediately out of scope and you'll have wasted your time. Please also only apply if this is in alignment with your business model. I mean, it's one thing to kind of enable slightly more risky propositions to take place, but this is not free money. This is not, I would strongly discourage you from looking at it going, well, we can apply from that. That's completely something we don't do, but there's a pot of money there we can access. Generally, it's match funding, and even when it's not match funding, you might find that in order for you to comply to get the funding, you're going to have to distort your business model so much that it may not be worth it for you as a small business. So, if it's the right tool and the right intervention, please go for it, and if it isn't, please don't. There are other options, so have a look around. In terms of applications, please do prepare. They do take time to put together. I mean, some of the larger creative R&D applications will take you a couple of man-weeks. Some of the smaller ones obviously take less time, but a well-prepared application will get you straight through the door. I mean, especially if you consider that what your application is one of 400. If you've clearly rushed it in the last 5 minutes and you haven't spell-checked it and it generally looks a bit messy, then you are not going to get through. So put the effort in. Treat it as though this is access to finance. You would put some effort in, so please do. I would also recommend that you have some conversations with people, because there are many people, and there's a few people in the room, but there's also us. So if you're thinking of applying for these competitions or these kind of grant awards, come and talk to somebody, because there will be somebody who will tell you some useful information about how to make those applications. again, to reiterate the point that's made earlier, please don't leave them to the last minute. I mean, I say this every time and nobody ever listens, but we get 90% of our applications in the last 24 hours. And actually, there are technical issues. So, generally you've got plenty of time for your applications. Just please think about getting them in earlier, sooner rather than later. But, everyone will do them in the last 2 hours anyway. But I mention it just in passing. In terms of your application, you should do a number of things, and again, just sort of start waving me if I'm running out of time. You need to be highlighting the innovation. I mean, in terms of the Technology Strategy Board, we are the UK's innovation agency. You need to highlight whether there's commercial, whether it's technical, whether it's creative innovation. That's very important. We don't fund kind of incremental product development. We won't fund it if you go, well, there's a website in the US that we want to build in the UK. That's not good enough. We're looking for sort of, again, step change innovation rather than necessarily kind of incremental product development. You also need to confirm your ability to deliver. Now that comes down to a number of different things. That comes down to you as an organisation or you as a collection of individuals, whether you have a track record, you have a history, you have an experience. This is essentially you're saying, we've done this before, we can do it again. But also you need to prove that in terms of this particular project deliverable that you can actually deliver on it. So if all you've got is a great idea, then you need to be very clear about how you're going to turn that great idea into a fully functioning prototype. If what you've got is actually a prototype that essentially is needing a little bit of reskinning and some innovative elements adding on, well, obviously that needs less of a plan. So cut your cloth accordingly, really, so that the further away it is from commercialisation, the better prepared, and the more you're going to have to demonstrate that you've got the knowledge and the experience and the ability to take that idea through to commercialisation. In terms of market awareness, you need to show you have an understanding of the market, but also you need to show that you understand how you're going to get a piece of that market share. So it's great to say, well, there are however many billion smartphones in the world, but actually you need to also say that we're going to get a piece of that market. But also, it's not enough to say we're going to get 25% market penetration. Okay, really? How? Why? Prove you can do it, because otherwise it's just, no one will believe you. Business model. This comes back to enabling those kind of commercial prototypes. This is all about how are you going to commercialise your product? What is the business model? I mean, I know I asked that question a lot of the presenters this morning, but it's quite a key point. It isn't just about doing things for the hell of it, in terms of this particular process. This is about the commercialisation of it. Freemium is fine. And actually, if your business model is essentially giving away a free app or a free piece of activity that drives audience engagement, that puts feet on pavements, that increases the attendance through a museum, or it's about putting people through the kind of the gift shop or whatever it is, that's all fine, but just be very clear about that. And don't give away fivers. It's very easy, to say your business model is you're going to stand on a street corner and give fivers away to people who pass by. That will be massively popular, but that is not a successful business model. So, just be aware of what it is you're trying to pitch. And again, just to briefly reiterate it, show the added value in terms of the public sector funding. This is public sector funding, it is public money. We are looking at why this funding will enable you to do something that perhaps you wouldn't have done before. And there are some website links, and that's me.
Thanks, Matt. I would stress the last bit around the SMART, because I believe a lot of the people in the room would be eligible and probably the right place to start, and with a lot of the different programs they run. The next deadline is a week today, 29th, and then the deadline after that is the end of January, every 2 months. And if you submit, one thing that's good about it is that you do get some detailed feedback and a score, so you know whether or not it's appropriate to go back to it. So if you're on the bubble saying, I'm not sure if I'll get it done in time, it's still worth doing, because you're going to get that score and be able to go through it again. So thank you for that. Now to go to, shall we say, a little bit harder side of money. I wanted to say that although this is an investment team that Will Grant is part of at Finance Birmingham. It's also government money, but it has very commercial aims in terms of what it's trying to generate, which I don't want to steal anybody's thunder.
Thanks, Dan. That's great. So I'm Will. And I work for lots of different, I don't have any slides. I work for lots of different organisations, and I also, at the moment, work for Finance Birmingham. And I'm going to talk a bit about Finance Birmingham, about what we're offering, and I'm also going to give you some of my exciting tips that I've learned in the past few months, my first 6 months in venture capital, basically. Every time I've done a talk, my slides have got increasingly bare until they're just a couple of images, and this is my first one without any slides at all. So I've reached the natural conclusion of talking to people without slides. So I was asked by Finance Birmingham about 9 months ago if I wanted to invest a £5 million fund, and I said, that sounds interesting, let's have a look at it. And it turns out it's extremely interesting, and it's been an incredible sort of learning journey so far. The amount of stuff that I've taken away from it has been fascinating. So I kind of come from the other side of the table, from online web businesses, B2B, B2C, all those kind of consumer web products. That's my background, and that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. And this is my first time working for a fund. And so the basics, Finance Birmingham is a limited company, so it's a private limited company that exists to make a profit and a return on its investments. But the twist is that company is wholly owned by Birmingham City Council. So there are oversights from the council on what we do with the money. And that includes an element of social good. And for us, that means generating jobs in Birmingham, retaining jobs that are at risk in Birmingham, growing the local economy, bringing talent here, all the stuff that you'd expect a council to want to do. And if an application from any one of you guys or anyone in the region ticks those boxes for us, then that's a really big plus point, so bear that in mind. The money side of things is pretty straightforward. We have £5 million to invest. We've so far invested 250,000, so we have 4.75 million left to invest, which is the very start of the fund, really. We're at the start of the investment phase, and then there'll be a recoup phase after that, like most funds. And that's interesting because now is the time to apply and to get money from the fund, because obviously when it's all gone, it's gone, as with most funds. We're making investments of between £50,000 and £500,000 for equity, and we obviously are looking for a return over a 3 to 5 year period from that. And the kind of businesses that we're investing in, this money is earmarked for what we've called creative. So again, quite a loose term, and I think one of the previous speakers talked about, what a loosely defined definition that is, and I think pretty much, you know if you're a creative business, and you probably wouldn't have come to this event if you weren't, but just as a kind of reminder, if you make stuff that's, let's say if you make washers and you ship them out to China, or you buy stuff in China and ship it in, that's not creative. But if you make intellectual property and you exploit that IP to make money, then it's creative. That's kind of our broad definition. It's an IP-based business, effectively. So as Dan sort of hinted, we're kind of a slightly harder face of this in that we do want a return. But actually, that's a really good thing, because it means that when we talk to companies and when we see pitches, we have to apply some commercial rigor to that, and that really helps companies shape up their business plan and shape up their thinking into how they're going to deliver that. So that's kind of the headlines about the fund. It's open for business. I would like to talk to people. Please do apply. And if you just go to financebirmingham.com is the website. financebirmingham.com. There's email addresses and phone numbers on there, so it's as simple as that. What I wanted to just quickly impart is a couple of sort of quick pearls of wisdom. So forgive me if this is really patronising, but I'm new to VC. It's my first 6 months in the role. And the things that I've learned are what makes your pitch work. So what you put into your pitch that makes it investable. It's really simple. Investors almost universally are looking for the same 3 things. And whether that's the big VCs, Sequoia and Andreessen Horowitz, people like that, or if it's smaller regional funds, whoever they are, they're looking for 3 things. The first one is team. Number 1, most important thing is, can the team deliver this idea? If your idea is brilliant, but your team is useless, it's no good. You could take the best idea in the world, and it could be ruined by a bad team. Your team is the number 1 slide in your deck. What have they done in the past? How can you prove that these people can deliver this? Number 2 is the business model, alluded to by a previous speaker. The business model is really important. How are you going to make money out of this? And then probably the most important question, which is the kind of the last slide in your deck, which is when are we going to get our money back? Pretty much all investors in the kind of space that we're in will want to know that. They want their money back and they want a return on it. And if you can tell a story in your presentation of how that's going to happen, this is all, business plans are fantasy. But you have to actually tell that story. You have to say, look, we're doing X revenue at the moment. With an injection of investment from you guys, we'll spend it on X, Y, Z, which will generate this, and our return will be this. Now, if that doesn't happen, then that's a different problem. But you have to at least pitch that. So those are my top 3 exciting tips for pitching to a venture capital fund. And the message, loud and clear, is we would like to invest this money. So please do talk to us if you're interested in raising money for an equity investment. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Will. And the last one on the panel, probably another 5 minutes or so, because we want to allow at least 15 to 20 minutes for questions from the floor. Anthony Stories, representing Creative England, and this is probably somewhere between the hard VC money and the softer grant money, but I'll let him tell you a little bit about that.
Hello, I'm Anthony Story. So like Will, I also don't have any slides. Unfortunately, that's not because I know what I'm talking about. That's just because I wanted to canter through and not spend too long talking about it. Sorry, I missed this morning, but I just wanted to, can I just find out who's in the room? How many companies are to do with film? Anybody to do with film? Film? TV? Video? Digital? Games? Great, okay, thank you. Creative England. Creative England's now a year old, as from a couple of weeks ago. It basically supports the screen-based end of the creative market, so those kind of companies that I've just been talking about. And the idea is to support growth, try and help companies become the best in the industry, and we want to create jobs, we want to create new sales, and we just want to create great companies, and innovation is a kind of driving force behind all of that to make all of that happen. I'm pretty new to the public sector, but like Will, I'm sort of finding my feet, so this is a bit of a voyage of discovery, particularly when we get into answering questions. That's my caveat now. Actually, having said that, I find it, Will Grant, what a great name for somebody who's handing out money.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It's a pseudonym.
Yeah. I used to work in content delivery, so Story was kind of not too bad. So what I'm going to talk about is just kind of a little bit about the investment that Creative England makes. There are really kind of two aspects to that. Creative England was formed on the basis of supporting the film industry, and so there's core funding in place for that. There's hardly anyone from film, so I won't go into that at all. It's all on the website, creativeengland.co.uk. So if you want to find out about it, that's the place to go. So what we're also doing is we've got £5 million of money through the Regional Growth Fund to invest in businesses in order to kind of try and support their growth. And I think it's that thing, it's definitely about an investment, although we're not looking to take equity stakes in any of the companies that we are supporting. What am I going to say? So I think in terms of, well, what I'll do is I'll just rattle through the kind of stuff that we're doing, because some of this, because it's regional growth, some of this is regionally focused, some of this is a bit more nationally focused. I'll try and focus on the stuff which is particularly relevant in the West Midlands, and we'll give you an idea of the kind of stuff that we're interested or where we can actually support businesses and innovation. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that because it's to do with business growth, what we're trying to do is in a way that grant culture is not really as prevalent as it used to be. So what we're looking to do with the investment is to do things predominantly as interest-free loans rather than just putting money out. So we don't want to get any money, but we'd like to get the money back so we can share it out with other people after you have successfully done something amazing with it. So the kind of stuff that we're working with, the Digital Fiction Factory is really a way of getting companies to kind of from the digital world to develop concepts that the TV world is lagging behind, because I think a lot of people in digital have got some great ideas in terms of what the future of interactive TV might be, and this is one way to work with companies like the BBC and Channel 4 through Lime Pictures based in Liverpool to develop new concepts based around program makers don't make programs anymore, they create brands. So it's about developing the brand, apparently. And we're looking about how to get a kind of digital feel to that. That's kind of happening live at the moment, although it's kind of more focused in the northwest around the media city. At the moment, there is a collaboration going on with Birmingham Library, and that's really looking at what the future of the library might be. So there's kind of been complete refurb of the library. There is going to be, what have we got? About £250,000 is going to be invested, and what we're looking to do is to try and help companies to use the opportunity to leverage value from the supply chain in terms of developing new concepts in the library space which can then be taken off to other markets. So I guess there are two ways that we're using the money. One is investing directly into companies to do whatever it is that you want to do, basically continue and speed up your business plan. The other is to leverage the money and get other money coming in as well from third parties to try and buy into new business models which are kind of quite hard to break into, and to try and get the creative industry to work into that. So along those lines, another program that we're trying to develop at the moment is working with Marsden Hospital, and we're looking, so they're a cancer specialist hospital, and we're looking to see how we can work with them to develop new creative prototypes which can help with the healthcare industry. Really interesting stuff which is happening in the games industry and the Wellcome Trust. So some of the games companies might be aware of that. So it's that kind of way of looking about how do we use the money that we have to try and open doors which are kind of finding quite hard to open at the moment. We're currently also talking to Finance Birmingham. That's early stages. Dan, maybe Will can tell us a bit more about that. We are looking at, there's been a national fund which has been out recently, and that's purely about investing between £50,000 and £100,000 interest-free loans into companies to develop cool stuff in line with the business plan. Now what we want to do, as I said, is to do that as a loan, so the money will come back to us at some stage, but we're trying to make it as easy as possible, so if there are any problems with the banks, we can support that, and we're not looking to get any interest back on that too. For games companies, we have successfully just secured a £1 million games program, which is a combination of business support, investment, and also kind of working about getting placements coming into the industry in the southwest. Talking to companies in the West Midlands, we're now going to be in discussion about trying to make that happen. And if there are any games companies here who'd like to talk about that a bit more, love to find out more from you about what you're trying to achieve. What else have we got? There's stuff like Factual Factory as opposed to a Fiction Factory, and that's looking about how we can get games companies to work with the TV industry, and again, just kind of keep pushing the kind of slightly narrow view that most TV commissioners have got of what's possible outside their own domains. So that's just kind of like a spread of the kind of thing that we're doing. We don't have massive national funding which makes it a really clean, clear offering for everybody. However, there's lots of kind of interesting stuff which is happening, and if we can find a way which works with you, just come and talk to me more about it later. As I said, creativeengland.co.uk, otherwise happy to have a chat later on. Thanks.
Thanks, Anthony. So we're going to open up to the floor, if that's okay. If you've got your questions armed. If you don't, I will launch one in. Does anyone have something burning they want to get up? There's one right away.
Hi there, just one for Will. Is there any geographical limit to your grants?
That's a really good question, and it should have been on a slide. But yes, there is. So you have to be, the business that you incorporate, or you already have incorporated, has to be a Birmingham City Council rate-paying business. Or if you're in like Custard Factory or Science Park or somewhere like that, then they pay business rates instead. So yes, there is a geographical limit.
Okay. The geographical limit as well for Creative England is as the assisted areas outside of London. So it's in England, the English areas, regions outside of London.
Hi, mine's just really a follow-on from that. Does it has to be a company that's already based there, or could the company move there for the funding?
So we...
It's legitimate, yeah.
No, well, that's the whole point, is that it's designed to build the local economy.
Exactly.
So we're talking to a company from Europe at the moment who are looking to relocate from a major tech city in Europe to Birmingham in return for some support. So yeah, we'd be delighted if someone moved their business to Birmingham. Yeah.
Inward investment is one of the main drivers as well. So it's a key of trying to get more companies off the ground.
Sorry, we'll stop quizzing you, Will, about the exact criteria in a minute. But and what about partnership bids? If you have, say, a technology provider based in Birmingham and another organisation based outside working together?
It's not happened yet. Every investment goes in front of the investment committee, who is made up of people from both civil and elected people from the council. So there is obviously an oversight function there from some real people, and I think that would be a test case. They'd have to make a call on whether that was good or not. I don't know what the guidance is on it. I don't think there is any guidance on it. I can't see how it would be a bad thing though if it's if it's driving the economy?
In the past, it's been that you would need, in these instances, in these types of funds, they'd have to set up a special purpose vehicle. But if it's a partnership project, I think looking at something like the TSB, it's actually a really nice way to do it, because then you don't have to give away any equity as well, and they're encouraging that kind of collaboration.
Yeah, I've got a question for Peter. Arts Council grants, do they need to be led by arts organisations? And a second question would be, as a technologist, have you any tips on where I find arts organisations who might wish to?
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be put in by an arts organisation. We do fund a broad range of organisations. It's about your geographical area. So I only look after organisations and individuals in the West Midlands. So you have to find out who your local Arts Council officer is. But as a commercial company, you can put in a grant as long as we can see it's ring-fenced for just that project only. So I think it's a really good space to actually R&D something or really explore how the cultural sector could work with your company.
Lara Ratnaraja, I know a little bit about funding, so I'm not going to be too harsh on all of you, but it's actually picking up on Trevelyan's point. We've obviously got kind of both extremes. We've got the kind of very hard-nosed commercial investment and the more kind of cultural, softer investment. How do you get better risk-taking, and how more likely you're going to support it, that you do have a cultural organisation developing a partnership with a tech company? Hopefully this answers everyone's question. Setting up a new joint venture that you can actually look at either equity investment and more, because that's one of the things arts organisations are here for, is to look at generating new revenue streams outside core funding. So what kind of risks is everyone prepared to take like that?
Well, we like artistic risk, but we realise, obviously, as public sector resource diminishes, we can't be the only person. So what we'd like to see is collaborative bids. So we do work with other funders really well. We understand that some projects might be Arts Council invested, but the broader project might have other investors or indeed a commercial application. So we're quite easy, but artistic risk is where we're at.
I guess that sort of depends slightly on the tool we're talking about, but generally Technology Strategy Board likes risk. If it's not risky, then it's not necessarily either innovative. I know that's a sort of slightly sweeping statement. I think it's a careful balance, but actually risk is good, because what we're trying to encourage is to people to maybe do something that perhaps they wouldn't have done anyway. So if it's just so obvious and so risk-free that you were going to do it anyway, then we're not really interested in sort of that intervention. But if it's potentially risky, along with the fact that you've actually kind of shown how you're going to mitigate and manage and deliver on the project, I mean, you don't just go, it's very risky, but we're not quite sure, we'll roll the dice. As long as you're kind of saying, well, actually, there's a process for managing that risk and then delivering on the project, then that's good.
Okay, so I think Finance Birmingham is, if you look at the risk spectrum, if you like, we're probably more risk-averse than these other guys. We're probably less risk-averse than say I hate to say the word proper, but you know what I mean, a proper VC fund, so a big multiple life partner investment fund, London or Silicon Valley or whatever. They're probably a bit more risk averse. So we will probably mitigate a risk against creating a job in Birmingham or building the economy locally. So so I guess that kind of, hopefully that answers the question.
I suppose we kind of tackle risk from several directions. So in terms of, so there's recently been £1 million business investment fund, and in a way the risk lies with you. That's really kind of focused on having an idea that you believe is going to work. And so there's a loan of which we are not doing VC style interrogation about that how that's going to work. We're looking really about what the proposition is it a good idea, and do you believe it's going to happen? Because of a loan, you just need to pay the money back. So if you think it's going to work, and if you feel confident about that, then that's about as much risk. The risk really lies with you. We're about to launch a new program next year, which is focused at startup companies. That's going to be providing £10,000 grants. So that's kind of not a loan, that's going to be a grant going into companies, and that will have a huge amount of business support, because actually a lot of the time the issue is not to do with the money, the issue is to do with about kind of having a wise business head in a creative company, because often creating fantastic creative ideas comes naturally to creative companies. However, thinking about kind of future business planning isn't necessarily as good a skill. So it's about trying to combine that and mitigate that a bit. And then the last thought is, in the example of the Birmingham Library, that's just looking for interesting ideas. Now, if the idea is really good, but there is a higher element of risk of doing that, then rather than looking at providing a loan to enable somebody to see this as being a long-term commercial venture, is that we'll be open to the discussion about trying to come in as a kind of low-level partner on some sort of profit share basis. So it's kind of, it varies depending on what each of the projects are.
Just to throw a question in there for the panel, how many of you in the room know about crowdsourced funding? Okay. Those that don't, there's a really good book you can download for free called The Crowdfunding Bible, but essentially there's tons of new models of how to raise funding out there. Some are quite easy, some of them are ridiculously hard, but I think that what it's done is it's opened up the space for early stage angel investment in a way that's very innovative, but also to build crowds and build interest in your projects. So things like Indiegogo, Kickstarter, Thin Cats, Crowdcube. To ask the panel, what do you think of these new alternative financing routes?
So I have a thought on this really, which is if it's sort of classic web disruption really. If you look at so any business that relies on segregating and restricting access to information or resources is traditionally upended by the web. And if you look at the classic example is estate agents, right? So the estate agent had all the houses that were for sale, and you had to go to the estate agent to find out, to get a house. And then Rightmove flipped them upside down to the point where the estate agents are all beholden to Rightmove now because they have the eyeballs. Fascinating. And I think crowdfunding and crowdsourced funding is going to do to this kind of thing what Rightmove did to the estate agents. And I think sooner or later crowdfunding will be a big problem for a lot of funds because the big Silicon Valley VC funds that spring to mind, like Andreessen Horowitz or Kleiner Perkins, people like that, and even the startup, the accelerator stuff like Y Combinator or 500 Startups, they all come with so much expertise and connections and the networks, and that adds a huge amount of value. And when you're bargaining with them, you're prepared to take a bit of a hit because of what you're getting. And I think hopefully we'll see that the advance of the web and crowdfunding will really start to change the game for a lot of these smaller funds, and they probably won't like it. And the web will always win, basically, is the short answer.
I think the other interesting aspect of that is that certainly the crowdsourcing funding is also being credited as getting the banks to start lending again, because the banks are realizing that there's a new player in town, and where they've been hoarding their money a bit, they're sort of feeling, oh, okay, well, if there's somewhere else you can go, maybe we should be getting back into the market again. So I think that's been quite a positive effect on it. Interesting to see that Kickstarter is being sued for IP infringement, which was something that came out yesterday. So don't know if that's going to have any impact. It's early days on that still. But I think it's also kind of interesting that a lot of these, the crowdsourcing is just about providing money because you think an idea is quite cool. That's got a limit to how much money you can actually raise on that. And what's interesting about it's Crowdcube, isn't it, where you're actually taking an equity stake in the business as well. So there are kind of different models, and it'll be interesting. It's very early days to see how those develop and what the kind of the investor appetite is about how big that gets as well.
We in the cultural sector really like crowdfunding. I think it gives the individual a voice, and it's quite a visible voice. We've got our own platform that was funded through the Digital Content Development Fund called Angel Shares, which you mentioned, by Indigo, so do log on and have a look. And again, within the cultural sector, it's very much about the idea, the narrative, and that very easy dialogue with audiences that artists and cultural organisation has, which does lend itself to crowdsource funding. We also have a lot of intangible benefits, whether it's seeing a dress rehearsal, meeting the director, speaking to an artist, being the first at a private view. So for us, it does fit really well, and it's a challenge for organisations to be short and direct and go straight to market with an idea.
Just to sort of endorse that, I think the crowdfunding options are very interesting, and they're definitely worth a look at. They're worth a look at for a number of different reasons, I think, as well. In terms of something like Kickstarter or any of the other options that are kind of talking about raising funding, they are a good way to get your kind of initial funding and get the funding in, which you can then leverage into some of the kind of match-funded grant options. So they're quite a good way to help unlock that. Things like, top tips for Crowdcube, I suppose. We did a one of the programs we did, which was the kind of Race for Apps, which was tied into the Olympics, and that was about kind of raising awareness for app developers. And we had a kind of a dialogue, an ongoing conversation with the Crowdcube guys. One of the things they were saying was two things, really, I suppose, in terms of saying top tips. One is nobody likes to be first. So, when you put your offering up there, don't just leave it there, sitting there with kind of, tumbleweed going past. If you can raise sort of friends, family and fools. If you can do the friends and family funding right up front and get that in there, then, nobody else wants to be the first person to pledge their tenner. But also in terms of the statistics, I think it's something in the region of 100% of projects, give or take, 100% of projects on there which hit the 40% funding mark will go on to get their funding. So, if you can, there's definitely a tipping point, because people they want to jump in on the idea, and once you've reached a certain level of funding, then actually it gets a certain momentum, and people will kind of think, especially with Crowdcube, because you're talking about a sort of micro equity sort of investment model. If people think it's a good idea because other people have demonstrated it's a good idea, then they will jump in. Kickstarter is a different proposition. Kickstarter is essentially sort of pre-selling. I think there are a number, obviously with Kickstarter in the UK just having opened, and there are a number of projects which have launched on there which are slightly, they sort of launch them and switch them on and then sit back and go, this is going to be great, the money's going to roll in. And actually you have to treat this as a significant activity. You cannot just launch it and then wait your 30 days. What I would recommend is, again, have conversations with people. You can talk to the Kickstarter guys and they will give you some very interesting pieces of information in terms of, 30-day activity programs, in terms of what gets funded. They'll talk to you about the importance of having a $25 kind of pledge amount, because actually that's kind of one of the most common amounts. I think it's something like, it's the most common, but actually the average funding is something like $70. So you need to have a kind of a range of rewards, and you need to build it so that you've got kind of stretch goals. Pick a number which is not only useful for you as a project delivery, but actually is achievable as a target. And there are things, there is a longer conversation around the sort of the 400,000, 500,000 mark being a good point in terms of, and actually that allows you to set stretch goals. The spending or the pledging profile, you will get a lot of pledges up front and you will get a lot of pledges at the end, and you get this kind of dip in the middle, and that's the way it is. Don't fight that. Just kind of learn to understand it. Don't get disheartened when you're hitting the middle of your program that actually that's, it's dipping down, but do make sure you've got a certain amount of activity. Also match your activity to that kind of pledging profile, so that you're getting your updates out, because this is about engaging with your kind of normally investors in terms of Kickstarter. People can pledge money and they can also change their mind before the end of the program. So, make sure you're updating them, make sure you're listening to them. I would say that Kickstarter is, and especially generally kind of crowdsourcing, this is a good way to engage with your kind of potential customer base and actually listen to what they tell you. If they're telling you, I don't know, if you're doing a kind of, as Stainless did, they did Carmageddon as a Kickstarter program, and actually the feedback they got back was a number of things. People wanted a Linux version, they wanted a Mac version, so they added that in as a stretch goal. People wanted a DRM-free version. Now, there were issues around why they'd gone Steam and why they wanted to go to DRM, so they had a dialogue, they had a conversation with their sort of, essentially their pre-sold customers, and they opened up a DRM option as another tier reward. The worst thing you can do for Kickstarter, I'm just to labour the point really, is, stick up a nice page, launch the program, and then step back. You've got to engage, and you've got to treat this as a kind of pre-sales, because they're not getting equity. And also people like physical stuff. I know this is all about digital, but actually, give them the digital product and give them the t-shirt, give them the little bit of plastic. They like the physical rewards that come in with the different tiers. And I say, if you are considering a Kickstarter program, then please do talk to somebody first, because there are quite a lot of lessons and there are pitfalls that you can avoid. Generally, it's a great thing, but go into it with your eyes open and make sure you actually put the effort in, and then you'll come out the other end successful.
Can I ask a question as well? So
yeah.
Kind of around that just, it seems there are two things. That there is a question about, do you want to develop a product or do you want to develop a business? And those are two different propositions. And so from the crowdsourcing, on the whole, most of it is focused about developing a product. And talking to somebody the other day, running a small company, saying, right, I need some money. And then when you start talking to them, you realise actually you don't need money, you need a partner. You need somebody who's going to do that kind of management side of the work for you. So the question really is, with the crowdsourcing, is that going to provide you? It provides you with something, but is that what you need? And in terms of presumably the support you get from Finance Birmingham, it's going to be a hell of a lot more hands-on in terms of actually helping direct the company to make sure it grows in the right direction.
I think that's a valid point, but maybe I'm just being too deliberately sort of controversial about it, but I just, why should a few people be the arbiters of what gets funded and what doesn't? People on this panel, I'm sure, are all incredibly wise, myself included, but mistakes get made, and the right companies don't always get funded. So, suddenly it's like anything that gets democratized and devolved by the web. Why should a select few be the arbiters of who gets this kind of funding and who doesn't? And interestingly, actually, there's a council in the north, I think it's Lancashire County Council. Yeah, Lancashire County Council. They just put £100,000 into Funding Circle. So their equivalent of Finance Birmingham has gone, you know what, let's try it. Let's put £100,000 into the crowd and let them make the decisions on the investments, which I think is a really, really brave, bold thing to do, and we're going to see way more of that, I think.
Yeah. I think we have one more question. Mr. Govan?
Hi, Mike Gogan from the Virtual Experience Company. One word that has not appeared at all in any of the presentations or in any of the things today is the word export. Overseas business, developing export business. Does the panel have any comments at all about support for that, or is this something we should be doing?
Yeah, so I think UK, in another one of my many hats, we're dealing with UK Trade and Investment, and they've been, UKTI have been really, really helpful and really supportive. And if you are looking to extend the way your business works internationally, I would definitely advise talking to UKTI. They've been great. They've been really good. They have a program.
Well, personally, I'm talking to them a lot, but yeah.
Okay. So I suppose just broadly speaking, because we, at the moment, are investing in the creative industries, one of the unique things about that is distribution isn't a challenge anymore. If you are a video game or you're an online service or B2B, B2C, suddenly the whole world is your market because you were on the web. So I think we almost take it for granted. I think that happens a bit. I kind of watch a pitch from someone and I'm already assuming how's this going to work internationally, how you're going to evolve this into Brazil, Russia, India, China, places like that. And I think it's kind of bolted on and built into the pitches in some way. And I think you're right. I think if someone's not addressing the international element, especially in the creative digital sort of space, then they're missing a big trick.
I think, I said at the beginning, in terms of sort of TSB enabling, it is about opening up markets, and those markets are ideally global. I would reiterate that point again. When you are talking about digital, and especially creative digital, there is a sort of certain assumption. But actually, that's interesting as well, because some of the programs and some of the opportunities that are out there are sort of designed around sort of hopefully opening up and enabling those markets. And actually, as digital, you've got a massive head start on those kind of distribution channels. And actually, if you're talking about, especially in, say, games industry as an example, really, but if you're talking about sort of minimum viable product and getting that product out onto the internet, you are immediately global. You're talking about kind of global customer base, and actually, you'll find that will, tick the relevant boxes in a number of different places, and actually it's well worth highlighting that. And it is true that there is now sort of a certain assumption that that's kind of what's happening, but it is worth making it very clear in your proposals or whatever else it happens to be that actually this is going to unlock a global market, and these are the reasons why. It's well worth highlighting, I think.
Obviously, Arts Council England do support export, but it's very much export of cultural product. And at that point, because we are UK-based and essentially it's people's taxes that are paying for the products to be made here, is we passport over to British Council and UKTI. So Birmingham Royal Ballet have worked in China, say, and that's taking a cultural product to a new audience and then and they've done the other way around as well, so bringing Chinese artists over to Birmingham. So we're aware of international markets, but it is a very UK-based fund.
Of course, just one thing I would add, and it's kind of related to this point really, is when you're looking at some of these opportunities, and especially when you're talking about kind of grant funding, is not to be necessarily tripped up by the kind of semantics in it. I mean, and it's related to kind of making sure that you're hitting kind of global markets by implying that you are in terms of internet. But if you see an application and it's talking about metadata, if you can take that and say, well, actually by metadata what they mean is data, or by that particular thing they mean this, and you can sort of help translate that across sectors, and you might find there are some more opportunities than perhaps there were otherwise first obvious. So talk to somebody and hopefully they can help translate.
Okay, thank you very much. Just before our panel leave, because we didn't tell people at the beginning, if we can just get you to go along the line and tell us what your Twitter handle is. However, I'm going to give you a handy way of remembering Peter's, because she's Peter, P-E-T-A-M-B-U, but every time I see it, I always think it's going to say pet ambush. But but that's just, so if you could just tell us what your Twitter handles, God, listen to me. Twitter, your names are on Twitter. So
Danny Licari.
At Peter MBU.
At Matt Sansom.
Mine is WGX. And it's mostly very offensive, so bear that in mind.
It's Anthony Story, and mine's very erratic.
Oh, your name's very, I thought you meant your name was erratic.
No, my entries.
Okay, thank you so much. So, does crowdfunding work? I have in my hand a Sheffield Documentary Festival bus pass holder, which I upgraded from the $25 to the $30 gift, so I would get the bus pass holder. So does it work? On idiots like me? Evidently. Thanks so much. There was... also, can I just check, because there was loads of really great information in some of the slides. Are the slides going to be up on the... Because there was lots of top tips and very useful stuff. So check back on WW Hello Culture for that. Don't forget the update. Do your survey. It's like, I'm going to give you loads of homework. You can have a cup of tea and coffee and innovate and network and get together. But also, don't forget the survey. Don't forget our information stands. Coffee and tea's at the back. Can we be back ready to start at 5 past? And can we all thank our panellists for a really, really useful session?